Okay. Okay. Let's see who's learning with us. Participants. Great. Okay. Naphtali and Yosef. Buenos dias. You have to hit invite here.
Oh, should be good.
I don't know why they're showing on the bottom. Okay, whoops. Let's go. See the picture.
Go back.
Video.
Go back.
And then go back.
Go back to the.
Oh.
And now hit this.
Oh, okay. All right, we're good. Good morning, Naphtali. Can you hear me? We'll fix it. Naphtali. Yosef.
Probably on
It's
mute.
good. That's put that.
Oh, yeah, you're on mute. I know. You're gonna fix that.
Come on, I need this fixed. Doesn't say used. Somebody's messaging. Good morning.
That's funny. Wednesday morning.
I think I had to do that invite. Whoops. I think we best start this again because
I moved my papers.
unless
And then I was like, oh, probably started.
it's not showing the video.
Friday morning. She has to stuff in the.
All right, if you're listening, we're going to come right back again.
Open it up. And she's like, oh.
Ah, that's why he didn't answer. He wasn't there. Naphtali, can you hear me? Naphtali, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, he doesn't have his headphones on. Yosef, do you hear me? Get this. I feel like this is a Verizon commercial.
See, you're not.
Can you hear me? Oh, he hears me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, okay, because we've been waiting to make sure you can hear. All right, let me just move this to this.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Yosef is hearing also. Okay, we're going to start in a moment. Let me find where we finished off. The other day was Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph at the bottom somewhere. We're up to Chaf Gimel Amud Beis already. I thought,
No.
wait, Naftali, tell me where we finished.
We are on Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph.
Yeah.
I think we are, let me see,
Halfway in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Omer?
Probably what I would
Rabbi Yehuda Omer Beis Arba, yeah.
Okay, all right. So, do we need we don't need a recap. If you don't
Yes,
remember,
yes.
you need a recap? Okay, quick recap. All right, let me just look very quickly. All right, we're gonna just jump 2-minute recap. All right, Mishnah was talking about that if you have a shovech is a field, I guess, that you have to distance it at least 50 amos from the city. Excuse me, no, the shovech is the dovecote. The dovecote is like a hut with a gate or windows or whatever. I don't know what people had all these doves for. They like, did they eat them or for korbanos? Or
Rennie, I looked that up and it said that people kept them for the food, they ate them, and for the dung that they produced.
and for the dung. All right, so there's your answer. All right,
That was a big commodity.
yeah. I just park under a tree. For some reason, I get it, even from the iguana. Anyway, all right. Below you said Adam Shabbat v'Sech Shalom. All right, a man, if he's going to, I'm just trying to repeat this quickly. If he's setting up a dovecote, he should do at least 50 amas from the ear, from the city. All right, not from his ear. All right, and he also shouldn't build it within his property unless he has 50 amas going on all 4 sides of his property. Again, the concept of you want these doves sticking within your grounds and not bothering anybody else. Rabbi Yehuda says, which is what we're going to bring up now in the Gemara, one must have an area of 4 core in each direction. Now, 4 core is one base core in each direction, all right, which is the extent of a dove's single uninterrupted flight. All right, what's that? You're being Trump with a bandage on you. All right. However, if he purchased the dovecote, what if somebody bought a field and there was already a dovecote within it? Is that how you pronounce it, dovecote? I feel like I'm, in the Civil War the Revolutionary War, redcoats. You say dovecote, Naftali?
Yeah, it's spelled with a C-O-T-E. It's D-O-V-E-C-O-T-E.
I know, but am I pronouncing it right? How it's spelled and how I pronounce are 2 different things. I'm going to say dovecote. Someone could correct me if that's not right. All right. All right. So if someone bought a field, a shavech, and there's a dovecote in it, but it's less than the circumscribed property that we just defined in the Mishnah, he still keeps it based on chazaka. The chazaka will go into more detail in the Gemara. Anyway, let's now jump down to where we're up to in the Gemara, which was Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Hold on a second, because when I have to recap everything.
Oh, just an answer.
Okay, hey, good morning, Moshe. All right, okay, yeah. Okay, bye, Tanya. All right, hold on. Where was Rabbi Yehuda here? Let me go back and find Rabbi Yehuda in the Gemara. And let's get going. Guys, you're distracting me. I'm losing everything.
The first word on the line is to have.
I got, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm good. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Beis Arba Korin. Rabbi Yehuda says one must have an area of 4 core. However, and again, what it said in the Mishnah, if he purchased a dovecote from a previous owner, even if the entire property is much smaller, quarter cov, the dovecote retains its chazaka, meaning you leave him with it. The Gemara deduces a law from this ruling. So what did the Gemara deduce from this? Rav Papa to Bitema Rav Zvid. Rav Papa, and some say was Rav Zvid, said, Zasameres, the Mishnah informs us, Toanam Lelokeach, that we, meaning the court, plead on behalf of a purchaser, the Toranim lo Yoresh, and we, the court, plead on behalf of an heir. Sounds like the joke. You're right, and you're right. In which we're pleading on both sides. How the court pleads on both sides, I don't know. But remember, the court is supposed to be impartial and listen to both sides. So I guess it can plead on both sides. I don't know. I don't think they had lawyers in those days. The Gemara asks, Yoresh Tanina, with respect to an heir, why do you bring this up here? We've already learned this in another Mishnah, which states, Haba Mishum Yerusha, one whose claim to a property comes by virtue of an inheritance, Eno Tzarech Taina, doesn't need to plead it as to the source of his ownership, because the court pleads on his behalf. So this, I guess, was with Katanim, I think, young orphans, and they want to make a plea. Our inheritance included this field, and somebody else says, no, your father sold me that field or this or that. So the court steps in and pleads on their behalf. So if we've already learned that another Mishnah, why does this Mishnah have to repeat the identical law? The Gemara answers, our Mishnah is necessary because this law is in regard to a purchaser. The other Mishnah merely stated in respect to an heir. So as we said here, it's both in regard to an heir and a purchaser. So that's why we need this being mentioned in our Mishnah. The Gemara asks further, Lokech nami tanina, with regard to a purchaser, right? Let's talk about him. We also learned that in another Mishnah. Lokachatzer vazizin veguzteras. A person purchased a courtyard which had ledges and balcony that extend over the public domain. All right, so I want you to imagine the guy bought a lot of land. It had a little apartment house on it, and it had these balconies. And the balconies was going over the street where people were going, and obviously people could bang their head on the first floor balcony if it was a little bit too low and cause problems. So, but look what it says, Hareza b'cheskasa. Even though this ledge, awning, balcony, whatever it is protruding into what is currently Rishus Harabim, public property, we still plead on behalf of the purchaser that the seller built the projections legally. All right, so there's no papers around from zoning. There was a fire in zoning like happened back in the late 70s. You can't, certain homes you can't get the original records from the zoning department. I don't know if it was a fire when they changed from paper and microfiche to computers, whatever it is. It's just not available for certain homes. All right. So in that case, if someone's going to make a complaint and say, hey, Joe, Reuven, whatever your name is, your ledge is sticking out. Every time I ride by with my car, it knocks the luggage rack off, or every time I ride on my camel, my hat falls down. He says, no. So the court will come in there and plead on behalf of the purchaser. So now, why must the Mishnah repeat this law? All right. So the Gemara answers, Tricha. Both Mishnahs are necessary. The Yashmin and Hasam Gabi Rishus Harabim. Fifth, the Mishnah had taught the ruling there in the case of ledges that extend over the public domain. I might have said that only in the case. What are you showing me? Experience Hendricks.
Hey, Joe.
What? Oh, okay. Stop distracting me. I'm distracted enough inside. I need to be distracted outside. All right. The public domain, I might have said that only in the case do we plead on behalf of a purchaser. The Amor Konis Lasach Shelo Hu. For it is reasonable to say that the previous owner recessed the wall onto his property and built the extension over his own land. Or listen to this upshot. When we're pleading, we could say, you know what? Before you moved to this neighborhood, all right, I remember this area, and guess what? That property that now the people are walking on, that used to be part of his parcel of land. And when he built his house, he did follow the zoning laws at that time, And he didn't build all the way up too close to the fence line, but he backed up his house, 50 feet or 30 feet or whatever, more than he had to. Then he built the ledge. So the ledge that was built is really on his property, not public. Now, in the course of time, the fence came down, people walk. And when it's raining, everyone all of a sudden likes to walk under the awnings of stores. All right. How do I meet people? I'm getting okay. So how? Please make sure you're muted. You have muted yourselves because I was hearing noise from there. All right. So he built this house on his property. The awning was on his property. But now that kind of, as they say, the fences are gone and it might be raining, people tend to ride or go under the awnings or his balcony. All right. So it doesn't mean that land was public property. And that's what they're tied to. That's what they're going to claim for him. Or that the public yielded him the right to build an extension over their domain. So it's unlikely that anyone could have defied the public and built it illegally. Or you could say, forget the first scenario. You know what it was? He built the house pretty close as the law was, within 6 feet or whatever amount of feet to the property line. All right. After which was the swale and public property. However, he applied for variance at that time. All right. Because he wanted to put out a ledge or an awning, something extending that actually did extend into the public property. All right. And you know what? Because he didn't want to do it illegally. He didn't want to do it without a permit. And it was approved. So you give him the benefit of that. Therefore, the claim on behalf of the purchaser is well-grounded. Okay. But here in the case of a dovecote that is harmful to an individual neighbor, all right? All right. So now we're again talking about kind of gorem, the dovecote. What are these doves? They may harm somebody. I'm not sure how, but we'll find out. Look, we do not plead on the purchaser's behalf because we must consider the possibility that the previous owner was a powerful person whom the neighbors were unable to prevent from building the dovecote illegally. It's a very interesting answer. So we're saying, it's possible before this owner or the previous owner, before you just bought it, that guy, he was a land baron or Gavir. He had a lot of money. And you know what? He didn't get a permit. He did it because he knew nobody was going to mess with him. All right? And so the Mishnah, therefore, has to plead on the case of the purchaser because we can't use the first example that we did. The Gemara's answer continues. The Ashminin Hacha, hold on, let me see. Oh, doing good. The Ashminin Hacha, and if the Mishnah taught this rule here, in the case of a dovecote, I might have said that only in the case do we plead and the purchaser's behalf, the Chayvin the Yachidhu. For since the neighbor affected by the dovecote is an individual, Ema Payuse Paise, it's plausible to say the previous owner came to terms with him and acquired the right to build the dovecote. So here's another example. Or we could say his neighbor's not public, is a single neighbor, individual, just like him. And you know what? He says, look, I want to build a dovecote. I will bother you. He says, nah, go ahead, it's fine. So we got permission from the what's that term we kept on using before? The guy who can Balmetzer of the neighbor who would have right to first refusal. Or that the neighbor yielded him the right to build the dovecote. All right. About rubbing, but with regard to a public that is endangered by a protruding ledge, non-pious, with whom could he possibly have to come to terms? All right. Again, we're changing the story around there. Yeah, so it's public. All right. Uman Shabbat. and who could have yielded the public's right to object. All right. Nobody is authorized to act on the public's behalf in this manner. I guess they didn't have the zoning board at that time that would make the thing. Let's see what it says here. Because the 7 trustees of the city act in the presence of the town people. All right. So in the other case, it did have a zoning board, and the zoning board gave it the right. All right. He says, but here again, what we're always saying is we're giving this whole Gemara for the next page and a half is all what's his name? W the milkman from tradition, fiddle on the roof. On one hand, on this hand, on one hand, on this hand, is going back and forth constantly. All right. So shock libertarians. All right. Okay. Therefore, you don't even need to bring somebody else. It just automatically does this. I mean, if it's a juggling guy. Therefore, another mission is necessary to teach us. We plead on behalf of the purchaser, even in that case. All right, you're right, and you're right. The Mishnah concludes, Harehu bechezkaso. The dovecote retains its chazaka. Okay. The Gemara raises a question. Rav Nachman had said in the name of Rabba bar Abuha, Ein chazaka nezakin. Here's a new ruling. All right. It's one thing saying that there's such a thing as chazaka. Something. Do me a favor. Can you sit like opposite me so that way I could see you once in a while? No, because I can't see it through Moshe's head. Yeah, Moshe's head is so filled with Torah. I mean, so at least I see you. And if Carl's listening, your son, I see him. He's learning. He's schmuck. He should have such nachas. Okay, tell him to watch later at approximately 6:19 on the thing. All right. But Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabba bar Abuha, Ein chazaka nezakin. Okay. When it comes to chazaka, like it's been there for 3 years, don't mess with me at year 4 and 5. Nobody's messed before. It's mine. When it comes to something that's damaging, we don't apply the law of chazaka. You can't use that there. So how can the chazaka have been established for dovecote that's a source of damage to the neighbors? So we're asking the question on that. All right, the Gemara answers, because previously we said that the problem with the dovecote is might damage the neighbor's field. All right, Rav Murray, I love Murray when he shows up. Rav Murray Amar Bekutra said Rav Nachman's ruling, where Rav Nachman said that it applies to things that cause nezakin, dangers, applies to smoke. So like the guy built a bakery on the first floor. This guy, the neighbor, lives on the second floor. That smoke from the ovens, this and that, is definitely going to disturb or destroy stuff on the second floor. Rav Zvi said it applies to an outhouse. So he's talking, we know what an outhouse is. It's like the blue boxes they put out here, but when they put a lot of them, like in a festival or some Vibranium, it's outside. Don't go near there, really. It's not like plumbing. So we're not talking about plumbing in a bathroom where everything is concealed and, shouldn't smell outside. You open the window for a moment, maybe spritz some Febreze. I don't know. However, chazaka can be established for less objectionable sources of damage. Oh, so are we up to the next page?
Yes.
Okay. So Nipo and Nimtza, is that? What's it for? No, what is the top of Chavdala?
Yeah.
So weird over here. It's still showing 23.
Now it's 23B.
Oh, 23B. I thought I was up 24. Okay. Okay. New case. Nipo and Nimtza Chamishim Amma. So a young dove was found within 50 amas of a dovecote. Okay, Nipo Hanimtza. All right, so he fell down, and he's found. All right, Harehu shel Baal Hashovech. It belongs to the owner of the dovecote. Makes sense because we assume it's probably his. All right, because it's within 50 amas. But what if somebody finds it at 60 amas, 70 amas? It belongs to whoever found it. What if it's found between 2 dovecotes? Now we're assuming that the two dovecotes are approximately 50, no, or less than 50 from each other. Okay, so how that ever happened means one of them had to have the chazaka originally, because the other, or they both had chazakas originally, but they're less than 50. The law is as follows: Karv Lazeh Shalom. If it was found closer to this dovecote, it belongs to the owner. Karv Lazeh Shalom. If it's close to the other one, it belongs to the owner of that dovecote. All right. So now we're learning a new rule called Karv. All right. It's not talking about relatives. It's talking about proximity. That something that's closer to you, to something that you own, probably came from you. All right. So, okay. Mechza, shneim yachloko. But if the dovecotes are equal, literally half and half, all right, in distance, then they have to split. Now that doesn't mean they make a korban. That one sells, one buys the dovecote and gives the other one half the money back. Right. And the two owners divided. Gemara statement. Okay. Two principles can be used to determine the origin of a found object. All right. So we're now going to discuss the difference between Rav and Karav. Rav is like the old majority rules, but here it's Rav means the majority. If the majority, if we find item C, and B is close to item C, B is Karav. But A, which is further, but most things come from there, do we say C, which was found, came from B, the Karav, the close, or do we say it came from the majority because most of, and you see how the cases come out here. So I'm Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Karav, Hochem Rav. Now memorize that. Rav Chanina says if there's a case that involves both Rav and Karav, all right, both proximity and majority from majority in total from somewhere else, he says we always follow Achar Rav. So most of the questions that come up will be questioning why is it Rav? It should be, Karav, it should be Rav. Okay, so remember, Nina says Karav. All right. A good way to remember that, if you want a mnemonic, is Chanina sounds like Chain, something I like, has additional, so something that's Chain you want to be next to you. So Chanina is always following Karav. I just made it up there. When, I don't know if I just made it up, it came came out of my mind. When a conflict arises between the majority of principles of majority and proximity, one follows the principle of majority. Wait a minute. Who says? I'm sorry. I don't know. I got backtrack. Chanina follows always Rav. Is that what I said before, or I said Karav by mistake? Chanina, anyway, Rav Chanina goes by the majority. Vafagav, the Ruba, the Raisa, the Korva, the Raisa. Wait, I just went to Rav Chanina, Rav Kava. Yeah. Even though both of these have a source in the Raisa, we know by Eglah Rufa, when they find the dead body, we go by the closest town. That's the people responsible for burying the body and bringing the ram or whatever, the egel, and slaughtering it. So that's written in the Torah. So that rules the Torah. All right. And then Rav, when we make a decision, we make it after the Rav. So both these things are midoraisa. So that's why it's like, so which one do we choose when they're both there? If they're both midoraisa, they're both from the Torah. So afilu haki ruba adif. Nevertheless, the principle of majority is superior. All right, that's what Rav Chanina says. So now the Gemara will challenge it. Rav Chanina's rule is challenged. Masi Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera challenged the rule. All right, this is talking about the pasuk that's talking about Eglah Rufa, where and it shall be that the town which is nearest to the slain person, the elders of the town shall take a calf. Again, the story there. They find a corpse in the land. All right, the town that's closest to where that corpse is found, they're responsible for the ceremony and burying the person. The Torah rules that the obligation of the decapitated calf devolves upon the nearest town. The afal gov dikachrite the nefisha mina. And since the Torah does not state otherwise, it would seem that this ruling applies even in the case where another town in the area, which is larger, more populous than it, than the nearest town. So what if there's the next town away, which is closer, is much, they have a population of 2 million there. The nearest town is a population of 50 people. All right. What Rav Hanina said, you go after the rove. But why here we're saying we go after the Karev? All right, what's closest? All right, this indicates that contrary to Rav Hanina's ruling, the principle of proximity overrides that of the majority, right? So remember, Rav Hanina holds majority, but here we have the case of Egla Rufa that is minority. It's not minority; we're going by proximity. All right, which in this case happens to be a minority of people compared to the next town. So it's challenging, the case is challenging what Rav Hanina said. The Gemara rejects the assumption of the question. It's not even a good question. The Torah obligates nearest town only in the case where there is no town, I have to pull it up, in the area larger than it. So that case is talking about there wasn't a larger town right there. The Gemara persists. But we should follow the majority of the world. That is, since people from the world at large passed through the area in which the corpse was found, the murderer might have come from a town from this area, which is larger than the nearest town. Hence, the fact that the Torah obligates the nearest town, because that's also the Raisa, proves that contrary to Rav Hanina's ruling, the principle of proximity overrides that of majority. So, it's a lot of people, it's a little town near Niagara Falls, all right? And they find the slain person. That town's responsible. You could say, but thousands and hundreds of thousands, not millions of people pass by this area going to Niagara Falls and this and that. So who says that the person that died? No, but all the Yidden go from here, go to Orlando. Anyway, why anyone in Florida goes to another place in Florida on vacation spends money, I still don't understand. All right. The Torah refers to a town that is situated between mountains. This is interesting. What was the case we just had here in the Pasha a week or two ago, right between the two mountains? Yeah, and then they come together and they get the people crush them in the caves. That was really cool. That was a case of reverse continental shift, with intracontinental shift. All right.
Continental squish.
Yeah, we'll call continental squish according to Hillel. All right, but anyway, getting back here. So this town is situated in between the mountains. I wonder if Bullock was passing the town and as he was going. All right. It is in an isolated area that's not frequented by people from elsewhere. So you can't even use the Rav there. All right, then. The Gemara attempts to refute Rav Hanina's ruling from our Mishnah. So let's review another way. Tanan. We learned in our Mishnah, Nipo Animtza Chamisha Amma, right? We said that above. If a young dove was found within 50 amas of a dovecote, Harahusha Bala Shavach. Oh, did it again. Come on. No, this thing, when I touch it and it jumps, all right. So I gotta just, maybe you give me another.
It's bad promotion for the Shaspat.
I know. Well, when you're giving the class, I'm sorry. Give me a moment. I just lost. Where is it in the Gemara?
Mamish in the middle.
Mamish in the middle.
By the way, Dovko is perfect.
Okay.
42.
Mamish in the middle.
Shel with the line Shel Bala Shavach.
Oh, okay.
The line
God,
starts
yes.
show polish.
Show power, show. All right, now I'm good. Don't watch my finger. Sorry about that. All right. That was one thing we don't go. So we said the Mishnah rules to the bird, if it was within 50, if it was Karav too close to the guy's Shabech, that belonged to him. You know, it's interesting. Think about it. It's on his property because so this has to be the case where it was a grandfathered in Shovech, because otherwise he wasn't allowed to build a Shovech up until 50 Amos. So it would automatically been on his property. So this had to be in the small area. And since the Mishnah does not state otherwise, it would seem that this ruling applies even in the case when there's another dovecote in the area, which is larger than this dovecote, but there's more than 50 Amos from the bird. All right. So on the other side, so this guy's got a dovecote. Let's say it's 30 Amos from the end of his field property line because it was grandfathered in. But the guy on the other side, which is more than 50 Amos from the bird, all right, but it's a larger dovecote. All right, he's really loaded with pigeons. He's got pigeons. I mean, he's got a dove factory. Since the Mishnah, Yosef, thank you. Yosef Lee Benache, Yosef Lee Talmud Sheni. I know you've been on. Since the Mishnah rules that the bird is from the nearer dovecote rather than the larger one, evidently the law is that contrary to Rav Chanina's ruling, the principle of proximity overrides that of majority. Once again, we have an example that even though Rav Chanina holds Rav majority, that we go by proximity. The
Rennie,
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention before we leave the subject of Karov, Varov, there was a situation in Los Angeles some years ago, and the whole discussion in Halakha was about this sugya in the Daf and the halakhas that come from it. There was a situation where it turned out that a kosher butcher had actually been selling meat that was not kosher. And the question was...
happened more than Los Angeles, but it's usually resolved. But what happened there?
And the question was, people saying, well, what do we do? Does this mean I have a treif kitchen? Do I have to throw out my pots, my pans, my dishes, everything?
That question happened elsewhere, yeah.
And Rabbi Reichik, Olav Shalom, addressed the issue in a community-wide meeting. It's on YouTube, and he discussed this sugya and this daf in order to come to a halakha conclusion about what people needed to do. It was very interesting.
What was it? Were they becheskes kashrus?
I tried, but I didn't understand the discussion. I'm just noting that it's a real...
These can be real, yeah. Okay, there's still situations in Los Angeles, They're finding a lot of homeless people. Where did they come from? Did they come from the majority of no. Hey, Yosef. You. All right. Okay. But mute him because it's coming. No, he needs to mute it because it's echoing. Does he know how to mute it? Okay, Kobe said. All right, continuing. All right. The Gemara challenges this thanks, Naftali. The Gemara challenges this interpretation of the Mishnah. If this is so, that the Mishnah speaks of an instance where there's no dovecote in the area larger than this one, and Maseifa consider the latter clause of the Mishnah. Remember, it said in the Mishnah. But what if it was found more than 50 amas away from the dovecote? It should belong to the person who found it. The Leica, now, if there's no dovecote in the area larger than this one, the dovecote certainly fell from this dovecote. Why didn't this Mishnah rule that the finder can keep the dovecote? It is evident, therefore, that the Mishnah speaks of a case where there's a larger dovecote in the area. But if so, the original question falls back into place. Why, in the case where the bird was found within 50 amas of a dovecote, does the Mishnah award the bird to the owner of the dovecote? this becomes kind of redundant a little bit. Its previous answer having been rejected, the Gemara advances a different answer. Hacha b'maya eskina. What are we dealing with here? B'midoreh. The Mishnah refers to a bird that only hops, for it's too young to fly. So the answer is saying this is a fledgling, and then basically it can't fly yet, and it just hops, and therefore it can only hop so far. So if such a bird is found within 50 amos of a dovecote, it's awarded to the owner of that dovecote, even if there's a larger dovecote more than 50 amos away. So that's a very interesting answer. They're saying because normally a bird, a fledgling that hops, only can hop a maximum distance of 50 amos. It's too tired after that. Or it's actually going to say that the fledgling, like if your dog's walking ahead of you, if you walk your dog and it's not on a leash, it'll tend to turn its head back to make sure it's always behind you. Certain animals tend to always do that. All right. So the fledglings, the little doves, will always look back, make sure it doesn't get too far from its home, from its dovecote, because it doesn't want to be lost. So it'll only do that up to 50 amos, all right? Because I guess maybe at that point, farsightedness doesn't work that well with the dove. I don't know, but not necessarily, you see. All right. So any bird that hop, all right. Dama Rav Ukva Bachama, we're going to bring a source. Rav Ukva Bachama said, Kol Medra Ein Medade Yotem Mechamishim. Any bird that hops, for it's too young to fly, doesn't have more than 50 amos for its nest. The bird cannot have come from the larger dove. Oh, I'm just repeating, we just said that. Okay. By Rav Yemia. So Rav Yemia asked a question. If the bird was found with one of its legs, so this sounds like a wise guy question. Listen what Rav Yemia says. Rav Yemia says, what if he's on the borderline and one leg is on this side of 50 and the other leg is on this side of 50? Who does it belong to? It really sounds like a wise question. So it's found that Chutz Mechamishin Mama, and the other one is on inside Mahu. Who does it belong to? And look what the answer is. Valda Apkuhu LeRabbi Yirmiyah Mibei Medrasha. Because he asked this question, the Rabbeim ejected him from the yeshiva, from the Beis Medrash. So you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Rabbi Smith, he doesn't, kick us out every stupid question I ask. Come on, I'd never be in this class, all right? But why did they eject him? Was it such a wise crack? And Rav Yirmiyah, would he be such a wise guy? They eject him not because of that. They ejected him because Torah, what is Torah Shbechtav Tov Sh'Rapeh, knows what it's talking about. If it tells you it's 50 amos, then the distance is 50 amos. Don't ask me a question like, well, what if it's 50 and a drop? That's what the question was. What if one leg is a little bit more than 50? So, because it stops at 50. Remember we learned previously about the camel driver that up to a certain distance, like the ear, you pay so much, but if it's a drop over, then you pay double or something like that, just like the mileage on cabs, they go beyond a certain point. All right. So that's kind of what was going on here. Tashma. Come learn the following proof from our Mishnah. Dimtza ben shtei shechavchos shovachas. In the event that a bird was found between two dovecotes, the laws determine as follows. Karvelazeh shalo. If it was found close to this dovecote, it belongs to the owner of this dovecote. Karvelazeh shalo. This we're just repeating. If it sounds closer to the other one, belongs to that dovecote. And since the Mishnah does not state otherwise, it would seem that the ruling applies even in a case where one of the two dovecotes is larger than the other. All right, this proves that contrary to Rav Chanina's ruling, who said that it goes by the majority, the principle of proximity overrides that of the majority. Question. What are we dealing with here? No. I mentioned this earlier. Right? Shishneim Shavin. It's where both dovecoats are equal in size. All right? That's the thing. So both dovecoats are equal in size. Don't give me an answer that it's questioning Rav Chanina. But should we follow the majority of the rules? This almost sounds like the same ridiculous thing. It's a little bit more. But wait a minute. Most of the doves don't just live in these two dovecotes. They live all over the world. So why should it belong to owner A or owner B? You know, why would you say finders keepers, losers weepers, whatever? Because it probably flew from somewhere else. I don't know where the pigeons came from in Florida. I always saw them as a kid up in New York. So someone can look that up. Where the pigeons come from? Did they all come from? I think the sparrows here all came from New York. Well, I'm not talking about the sparrow pirates of the Caribbean. I'm talking about
Cuba always had pigeons.
what? Sparrow? The little birds? Pirates of the Caribbean? You never took your kid to Disney World?
Oscar Shuttle.
No, actually.
Jack Sparrow is the name.
No.
No.
Family
He's one-
share.
Family shit. No, do you know, excuse me, there were Jewish pirates in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I read that book. Okay. Not Jewish sparrows. Okay. The lazy bus are moving down. But we should follow the majority of the world since there are birds flying throughout the year. They could have come from anywhere in the world at large. To find the bird should be allowed to keep it. That's the question. Yes, again, where were we? At the bottom of the page? Because it just
towards
jumped
the
to
top.
next. Are we up to the next page?
Just about.
Shabin. Oh, okay. So what are we dealing with? That's why he jumped to the next page. Bishvil Shel Krumen. The Mishnah refers to a case where the dovecotes between which the bird was found were situated at opposite ends of a path between vineyards. Oh, so this is interesting. All right, so here's the scenario. There's a vineyard, big vineyard or vineyards, and there's these walkways or a little road in between the vineyards. All right, I guess that's how they used to walk and then take the grapes off the trees or off the vines. All right. Well, at one end, they still do it. Yeah. At one end of this vineyard is a dovecote from owner A. At the other end of the vineyard, owner B has a dovecote. So the bird was found situated at opposite ends of a path between vineyards. In such a case, even if the bird is found more than 50 amas from one of the dovecotes, there's no basis for assuming that it's capable of flying, because it could have hopped more than 50 amas by using the vines as a guide. So again, now we're refuting the last answer. We said just before that the fledgling, the little bird that couldn't fly yet, sounds like a children's book. The little bird that couldn't fly yet by Hillel. No, I don't know. So, all right.
Anybody but this.
Okay. Your kid would love it. You make the bird. Okay. The Imisa, the Malay say. All right, because what would happen is he'd jump onto the vines, and therefore he could go a little bit further, and perhaps because he was higher, he could see back even better. All right. If you argue that came from elsewhere, came in the Midrash Lo Matzei, I say, since it hops, it would not be able to come here. Because as long as such a bird can hop and still turn around and see its nest, it'll keep on hopping. But if it's not able to see its nest, it won't continue hopping. Therefore, since the vineyards block the sight of the other dovecotes from the path, a young bird would not have hopped from those dovecotes to the path. Abaye adduces support for Rav Chanina's ruling that the majority of overrides proximity. Again, each time we're trying, some other Rav, new Rav, is trying to support Rav Chanina's Rav. All right, majority. because each time we seem to come to proximity as being the answer. So what does Abai say? Amar Abai, Af Anan Tanina. We have also learned in the Mishnah, Dam Shenimta Beprozdorf. Okay, now we're talking about a woman. Just very quickly, and I'm going to keep it family oriented. All right. There's when a woman shows blood for Nida, it's going to be either in the external, that's where it's going to be seen. The question is, did it come from the womb, where it has more blood? It's the majority, and that's where, or did it come from the place in the middle, cervix, which is just a small, but it's proximal, but there's less chance of blood coming from. So he says, Sveika Tame. If blood is found, it's a suffix that she's Tame. So now we're going to answer. Shechaskasko mina makor. Why? Because the chazak is it probably came from where the majority of blood comes from the womb. Okay? And even though there is something closer to it in proximity, all right, that is not where blood usually comes from, all right, we still say it probably came from the womb, and therefore she's Tomei, all right? So Rava, which again would be a support to Rav Chanina, who goes by majority and not by proximity, all right? Am I doing okay, Moshe, with my analogy? I'm trying to be very careful. Amalei Rava, Rav Matzei Kamras. You speak of a case in which two factors, majority and frequency, conflict with the principle of proximity. All right, he says, no, this isn't fair. It's 2 against 1. It's they're double teaming. It's like in basketball. Not only is the womb the majority, in other words, most blood comes from there. There's more muscle, this and that. That's the uterus. All right, but that's where it commonly comes from each month. So it's not only, it's a double. It not only is the majority, it's the frequent, it's frequency. All right. So you have kind of 2 roughs. Rough or mutzli. Mutzli means like frequency. Leika lemandamar, regarding the case where the factors of both majority and frequency conflict with the principle of proximity. All right. In that case, which is what we're giving as an answer here, no one would follow the principle. No one would argue that we don't follow the principle of proximity, even though we're saying nobody would argue with that. All right, and try and give a case for proximity. All right. Hence, this Mishnah doesn't prove Rav Chanina's ruling. The majority alone is above proximity because it was a double team. Because it was majority with frequency that outdid the proximity. So every attempt we've tried to do to undo Rav Chanina, we were able to find something to defend it. Let's go. I think so. That's what we're doing. The Gemara side that we laid the brisa. Okay. The Tani Rav Chia. Rav Chia learned Dama Nimtza Beprozdor. Okay, this is still speaking about woman. All right, a woman, she shows blood. Chayav love albias mikdash, v'sarfin love esatruma. So she's liable if and she has to bring a chatas if she walked into the temple, and if she touched truma, it's burned. So you see from that where he's quoting that that this is that's how we follow it. So even though that there's a proximal that's not where the blood is from, we're going to go by the majority. All right, I think that's what he's going to say. Amarava. Oh wait, yeah. So everything Rav Chia holds, the woman found by the woman, externally, renders her externally on the way there, renders her tamei beyond any doubt. This is the basis for the following statement by Rava, Rava, Shmami Neighbor the Rabbi Chia plus. So we learn 3 things from Rav Chia. Shmamina. 1, Rav Karav, Halach Acharav. So first he's going to say this proves Rav. all right? 2, Shmamina, we learn Ruba Deraisa, that the majority is coming from Deraisa. Why? Because it's saying, if it was Suffolk the Rabbanim, we wouldn't make a bring Korban, all right? I don't know about burning the Truma or not, but certainly not the Korban, I think. Let me see what 13 says. If it was Brennick, the woman's test Tumah would be only Rabbi. One does not bring the Chatas, or burn Truma, both of them. All right. And what's the third thing that we learn from this? Isa the Rabbi Zera, that the ruling is correct. Rabbi Zera said, in reference to a brisa which permitted meat found in the street of a city where the majority of butchers sell kosher meat, Naphtali, so this is going to go with you. Afalpi, the Doltos, Medina, and the Ulos. The brisa's ruling applies even where the gates of the city are locked. All right. So there's 9 butcher shops that are kosher. 1 butcher shop is not kosher. They find meat in the city, and guess what? The city wasn't closed. It was on quarantine for whatever reason. So you can't say that the meat came from another majority, all right? Because most of the world is not kosher meat, all right? For the case of the blood that was found, in the prosdor of a woman is analogous to the case found in the city, which gates are closed. For the case of a woman, there's only one majority. It was before we want to say it was a majority in the proximity, saying, no, there's only one majority. If Vafilu Hachika, as they know, Basaruba. And in the case of one majority here, you see that we still follow, and yet Rav Chia rules that we follow the principle majority in that case. Oh, because he says the basar is kosher, because the majority of the butcher shops are kosher. So again, I don't know what what was paskin there, but if it just went by this, you would say, oh no, that was an individual butcher shop. But in this case, we'd say that it's still kosher. The Gemara points out a contradiction in the statement of Rava. You know what? Here's an analogy. We have here in the stadium advertising. We have in the stadium kosher hot dogs. All right. I think there's one booth that's run by. Is it still run by Gedalia's son? All right, Macker's son. Shliach to the stadium here, so you can get kosher hot dogs watching a game here locally. But the majority of hot dogs in the stadium are not kosher. So what if you have an unlabeled case of hot dogs and it's found just outside the kosher hot dog stand? Do you say that was his, he just forgot to bring in for delivery? Or do you say it fell off the truck that's delivering it to all the other ones? Does it buy car? What? Unlabeled, I said.
That's what I'm saying. Should be labeled.
So
No label.
So we always double label
Okay.
this, that. We have to label you. All right. But they didn't have labels on the meat. Otherwise, you wouldn't have. Anyway, I just want to say that just like what happened there in LA, these cases can happen nowadays. But it was Rav who said, regarding a case where the factors of both majority and frequency conflict with the principle of proximity. No one says that we follow the principle of proximity. With this reasoning, whoever rejected Abaye's attempt to prove from the case of blood found in the prosdor that the principle of the majority overrides that of proximity. The here Rav himself adduces this very proof. It's contradicting itself almost. The Gemara answers, Rava retracted that statement, that he retracted his rejection of Abaye's proof, which he thought about a little more, and he said, you know what, conclude that the case of blood found in the prosdor is indeed a valid proof of Chanina's ruling, that the principal majority overrides that of proximity. Anyway, the Gemara has gone back and forth on all these things, so you see, it's got to be thought out.
So
And that's why, yes, Daniel.
So Rav is retracting, because before he said you had Rov and you had Matsui, this frequency.
Yeah.
So now he's retracting, saying, don't forget about the frequency. This case of the prosdor is just majority, like all the other ones.
That's what I think so. The Gemara does not explain the phenomenon of frequency. There's no possibly reason this frequency is merely due. Oh, it's interesting. It says possibly the reason is that frequency is merely due to majority rather than an independent factor. It almost knocks out that variable. Okay. Hey, it's good to see you. You're looking good. Daman Nimtza Beproso. All right. All right. We said this already. And if I'm repeating, the Tani Rav Chia, for Rav Chia taught that Dam Hanimtza Beproso, if the blood was found in the corridor. Am I repeating?
Yeah.
Oh, so it slipped.
Down to the keg.
One.
All right, so it jumped on me. It jumped on me. Oh, bear with me a moment. I'm going. It does this. If I touch it,
Look for the barrel.
I'm looking for the barrel. Okay. Itamar. Okay. It was stated, concerning a keg of wine whose origin is unknown. People are camping on the riverside. And lo and behold, comes along the river a keg of wine. Wow, they're by the Euphrates. That's where they go for camping trips in those days. Rav said, if they're camping right outside of a city, that the majority of the people in the city are Jews, and therefore that the wine is Jewish, all right, that the chances are that keg was from that city and would be kosher, Yisrael Mutar, all right? Keneged Ir Sheruba Nachrim Asira. But if it was in the case that it was parallel to a city that the majority were non-Jews, so in that case, you're assuming, therefore, the wine is probably mostly non-kosher wine, and therefore you're not allowed to have it. But look what Shmuel says. Even if the keg was found, what? It has a chirik here. That's why I read it on Sira. Right. It's Galatian. 90. Right. Sharufa Yisrael Asiwa. It has a chirik here. Come. What do you want me to do? I read it the way. Come here, Moshe, come in the camera. But it has it with a yud, so I'm reading it the way it's written here. All right.
It's not Aventura, it's Aventura.
It's not Aventura? You know, there's no D in Aventura. For the longest time, I thought it's Adventura. But Shmuel says, if it was found in the city, it's opposite, we're mostly Jews, it's still Asur, it's still Asur, it's still Asura. All right, make you happy. All right, are you still not allowed to have it? All right, because who says it came from there? Could have come downstream. All right, he's gonna say, why it's forbidden? Amor, because I could say Mahai Dikara Asoi, because it could have come the Kikar. Haidekira, that's the name of a town. It could have come from that town further upstream, right, which is a town which is not predominantly Jewish. And what it is it floated downstream, all right? It's not salmon, it's a keg of wine. And it shows up now by the town that's mostly Jewish. That doesn't mean that's where it came from, all right? Good learning from Shmuel, all right? The Gemara shows how this dispute between Rav and Shmuel corresponds to the ruling of Chanina. All right, so let's see. Lema Bidrabi Chanina Kamaflike. Shall we say that they differ with regard to Rav Chanina's ruling that the principle of majority supersedes that of proximity? All right. The Ma Islay the Rabbi Chanina, one master Shmuel who rules that the wine is forbidden. As the majority of the wine in the entire region, if it was nearest to a Jewish town, agrees with Chanina's ruling, Rav Chanina's ruling, and that's why he makes it asur. Omar Leisley to Rabbi Chanina, and the other master, Rav, who rules that if the wine is found nearest to a Jewish town, it is permitted even though the majority of the wine in the region is forbidden. Disagrees with Rav Chanina's ruling. All right, so because he goes by Krova. No, this is not necessarily the correct explanation of this machlokas, the dispute between Rav and Shmuel. The Kulayama is lahu the Rabbi Chanina, because it's possible that everyone agrees with Rav Chanina. The majority rules over proximity. But here they argue about the following: the Maz Sabar that Rav holds, one master, in this case Rav, reasons that the keg could not have possibly come from Haidikar, the Kira. He's going to say, no, don't give me that excuse. He said, the Meha the Kira aside. For if it had come from Hai the Kira, Akula Yabshure Havamatbeila, the eddies and the stagnant bodies of water, the so commonplace in the river, would have prevented it. He's saying, no, it doesn't just come straight.
Sink it.
Well,
mean,
I know
that's why it
they
wouldn't have
saying
gone there.
prevented.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, it would have either ended up in one of those stagnant pools going round and round all the time if you ever gone river rafting, or it hit the rocks and it would have sunk. Whatever, it would never gotten that far downstream. I guess it quite a distance. Let me see if it shows on the map here. The Kira and the Euphrates. Hold on 1 second, because there is a map here. Why is Euphrates, Tigris, Euphrates? Do they? Anyway, I can't tell you because the font is too small. Okay, we prevented it. Daniel, hi, welcome back. And I see him. So,
I'm fighting the mosquitoes here.
no problem. Okay. Oh, do you want to look at the map? Maybe you can find it. Okay. Okay. Omar Sabra and the other, meaning Shmuel, reasons that it still could have come from Haidikira without getting stuck on the way or destroyed on the way. Arifa the Nara Nakat Basai, for it could have gone caught in a swift current in the middle of the river, which is what people try and do if they're river rafting, and this come downstream without being obstructed on the way. All right? That's the way the river raft. According to this explanation of their, according to this explanation of their argument, Rav and Shmuel do not dispute the validity of Rav Chanina's ruling. Rather, they argue as whether it is applicable in this case. That's nice. The Gemara cites an incident related to the ruling of Rav Chanina. Okay. Oh, it's still doing good. All right. Hahu chatzpa the chamra the ishtabach. Bepar desa the arla. I'm sorry, I'm now wearing my glasses, so the font's a little tight. There was this barrel of wine that was found in the vineyard of Orla. That's strange. So they find a barrel of wine in the vineyard where you're not allowed to have grapes yet, harvest the grapes, because it's still within the first 3 years, right? That's what, there's no one. So, and it was not known whether the wine had been stolen from this vineyard, in which case it would have been forbidden, all right? Or it came from another vineyard. Well, it's a good question. It came from another vineyard, maybe, which was probably an older vineyard. It's not Orla, and we're in the place where, let's say, it's all kosher wines. So that you could have. Well, that's the question is right now where they come from. Shaya Ravina. Ravina permitted the wine. Ravina permitted it. So he wasn't concerned that it was stolen from this vineyard. He's obviously not even concerned that it was stolen. It doesn't even get into that. Because he's not saying you have to machriz. I found a wine keg and it's there must be a reason. We'll figure out. And it says the Gemara inquires, Lema Mishum the Sabala the Rabbi Chanina. Shall we say that Ravina permitted the wine because he agrees with Rabbi Chanina's ruling, which is that the majority, in this case, the majority of vineyards around that are already 4 years old, over 4 years old. Any of vineyards in the world, a larger majority, are not Orla. The Gemara responds that it is not evident from Ravina's decision that he agrees with Rav Chanina's ruling. His decision might have been based on a different consideration. What's that? It's interesting. Every case we've tried to support Rav Chanina, and then it gets shot down. This constantly what's been going on. Shani Hassam, the case is different. Perhaps Ravina reasoned that the wine could not have been stolen from this particular vineyard. So why did he say that? The mignav mine, for if it had been stolen from this vineyard, achnoi begave lo matzinan, then the thieves wouldn't have hidden it there, lest it be discovered. I mean, like, it makes sense, no sense. He's saying, if they stole it, a thief, usually when they steal something, takes it with them, and they might hide it somewhere else. But they don't take it and leave it. I mean, or hide it, they don't steal it from one part of the room and then hide it under the drapes in another part of the room. It's like, that's not how thievery works, I guess. But although that's probably a very smart thing to do, because the guy will think it's stolen, never buy it, talk elsewhere in the house. But he might say, I misplaced it, and let me look around it somewhere else. This reasoning applies to wine. About inve matznei, but as far as grapes is concerned, the thief might hide them in the very vineyard from which the grapes were stolen. So what if the thief came in, he picked a nice cluster of grapes, which he plans on, which you're not allowed to eat because they're orla, it's still within 3 years, and then he shoves them under a vineyard where he plans on coming back, on the side of, we said, these roads where you walk. He knew exactly at the 2-kilometer mile mark, all right, and the way to Key West, he stashed all these grapes, which you're not allowed to eat. Huh?
But I didn't know that.
Who didn't know it?
The thief didn't know that they were Orlan.
No, the thief might have been a guy. He might have been somebody or not religious, somebody that didn't care if it's within 3 years, all right? Hano Zik, I'm not going to get into other things than because either way it was not permitted for a Jew now. Hano Zike the Chamre, there were these leather bags. So now we're going to change the story a little bit. Let's leave the grapes themselves. They're leather bags of wine, the Ishkachan Beikufe, that were found between the vines of the vineyards which belonged to a Jew. So now the question is, these leather bags, all right, because that's how they used to carry wine and water and stuff in leather bags, all right? This is before plastic, before glass bottles. Even though they might have fallen from a non-Jew, right, in which case they would be forbidden. Shrane Rava permitted them. So the question is, on this little path that goes through the vineyards, you're now walking.
So the vineyard belongs to a yid.
The yid, right?
That's
Okay. Even though they might have fallen from a
a
non-Jew.
guy, but the vineyard belonged to a yid.
Right. There were leather bags of wine that were found between the vines of a vineyard that belonged to a Jew.
Thank you.
So, right. Even though they might have fallen from a non-Jew, in which case they'd be forbidden, he permitted it. So why did he permit them? So the Gemara asks, Lema lo sabala the Rabbi Chanina. Are we to say that Rabbi disagrees with the ruling of Rav Chanina? In this case, it would seem that the principle of majority dictates that the bags of wine are forbidden for most of the people from whom they could have fallen from are non-Jews. Whereas the principle of proximity dictates that they are permitted for the location which they were found were frequented by Jews, which would mean that he disagrees with Rav Chanina. Thus, Rava, who permitted the wine, apparently favors the principle of proximity over that of majority. All right. Over majority, which is superior. The Gemara responds, the Rava could hold, as Rav Chanina does, that the principle of majority overrides that of proximity, and yet he permitted the wine for the following reason. Now we're going to negate the last answer that we gave based on another answer, Shani Hassam. The case is different. The Ruba, since in that region, upon discussion, we're at the top of Chav Daled Amud Beis, the Shvuche Yisrael Ninhu, the people who pour wine into the bigs. Remember, the Jew in that area, most of the Jews ran the winery. It's a Jewish town, all right? And they ran the winery. And they would therefore pour the wine from the kegs into larger leather bags, all right? So that they could sell the wine. Or I guess they couldn't always schlep giant kegs everywhere. So if one finds a bag of wine, you say that probably fell from a Jew. So this presumption is valid regard to large bags, which are used by the wine merchants and not by travelers. So it's saying it depends on the size of the bag, perhaps. If it's a larger bag, it came from the wine merchant who's Jewish, who is bringing it from the kosher winery. It's definitely not Orla, it's good kosher wine, and therefore you could have that wine. All right, but it's a small bag, that's a question, because where the small bag come from? If it's a small bag, it's forbidden. Could it say it fell from travelers? And the majority of travelers at that time were not Jewish. All right? The answer, did it again. Oh, what long?
Want to use one?
That changes. What did it just do? It jumped to 20.
You're right before the Mishnah,
Right before the Mishnah.
24b.
I'm sorry. Oh, I hate my son's before the wine. Right. Now the presumption is valid with regard to large bags. Those situated small bags, not the qualification. He could have varied by a day. But if there are large bags together with the small bags, then even the small ones are permitted. Because the large bags certainly came from the wine merchant, who's Jewish, from a kosher wine place, all right, which was in Orla. But the travelers don't carry the large bags at all. So why were there small bags? Because he had to put them on the animals, on the donkeys or the bulls or whatever used to carry it. And he had to balance the bags. So sometimes you have to put a little bit extra to balance. All right. So we had extra. They were like sand bags, smaller bags of wine, all right, to balance them out. And I guess if he got thirsty on the way, he'd drink from the smaller bag. All right. Now we're up to the Mishnah. All right. Come on, stay with me.
Good pace. Come on.
All right. Well, I still got 15 minutes for sure. All right, we learned, or the Mishnah states that if you're going to plant a tree, you have to plant it 25 amas from the city. The harav of the shikma and a carob or sycamore tree has to be 50 amas. Abasho Omer Koilan Srak Chamishim Amas. All barren trees must be at least distance from the city line by 50 amas. If the city was there first, and one then planted the tree, again, we're talking about the non-fruit bearing trees. He must cut down the tree, and the city doesn't have to pay him any compensation because he wasn't supposed to plant it there. However, if the tree came first, but what if the tree was already there and then they made what's it called when they make a new city like they wanted to do for North Miami Beach or they did for Aventura?
Incorporate.
Yeah, they incorporate the land there, then becomes a new city within 50 amas of the tree. The city now can tell them, you know what, you gotta cut that tree down. Cuts if nothing done. However, if the tree came first, the city tells them, you cut it down and we'll pay you. What if it's a suffix? What if we're not sure because we don't know when the tree was planted? Zeh kadam, the suffix zeh kadam. Which came first, the city or the tree? Chicken or the egg? You don't know. You come and all of a sudden you see a city and you see a tree, not fruit bearing, 30 feet, 30 amas from the city, cuts it. The guy who bought that land, he's got to cut it down. Guess what? The city doesn't have to pay him. So they mandate that you have to cut down your tree, but they don't have to pay you. My timer. What's the reason that trees must be distanced from the city? You know, I would think for beautification, it's nice to have trees. So there must be a reason. Ula said, Mishimnoi Hayah, for the sake of the city's beautification. So apparently in those days, it was more beautiful to have it clear around the city. Gemara questions the need for the Mishnah to mandate the 25 amma clearing, but typically, but this prohibition to plant trees in the vicinity of a city has already emerged from another Mishnah, which states, Seinas in Sada Midrash. Over there it says that the inhabitants of a city may not turn fields that are on the outskirts of a city into a midrash, below midrash sada, nor may they turn the city's midrash into fields. What does it say a midrash is?
Just an empty,
An empty field.
an empty,
In this sense,
Okay.
so you can't. And what's a sada? And what's a sada?
open.
So what's the difference between the open field and an empty field? I'm not sure because it says Enos in sada midrash, and then you don't do a midrash sada. All right.
According to says open area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Verse 7 explains.
Okay. This open expanse was known as midrash. Okay. Under the law, it's forbidden to plant anything within 1,000 amma midrash that borders a city. So it's a bigger law. Why must our Mishnah forbid planting a tree within 25
Midrash is like a lot.
Okay, so it says if midrash doesn't allow planting anything within 1,000 almost of the city line, so why do you need the law that we just brought down the Mishnah that you can't plant a tree within 25 almost? The Gemara answers, Lo tzricha Rabbi Eliezer, it's necessary according to review of Rav Eliezer, Damos in Sada Midrash Sada, who says that you can turn the midrash into a sada and vice versa. Nevertheless, our Mishnah teaches here within 25 amas of a city, mishum noi hayeh lo avdinan. For the sake of city's beautification, trees were not allowed to be planted within 25 amas. Rabbanan nami, according to Rabbanan as well, Dramrin einos in sada midrash for midrash. According to Rabbanan, who said you can't make one into the other. Our Mishnah's ruling is necessary because Hanimila is one. The law also that law against planting in midrash applies to grain of awilanas abdinim, but trees may be planted in the midrash. All right, that's why they need it, because the rule was different for planting grain in that area as opposed to planting trees. Nevertheless, our Mishnah teaches here within 25 amas of a city, mishum nayaya low. So within 25 amas, you still don't plant a tree for beautification. The Gemara seeks a source for distinction made between trees and grain. Remember, it said grain within 1,000. How do we know the Shani Ben Zram knows that there's a distinction between grain and trees with regard to planting in a midrash? The Gemara answers, the Tanya, we know it, for we have been taught in the Brisa, Kapas Yosem Mibes Satayim. With regard to a karpaf greater than 2 base measurements, so hukah fladira, which was enclosed for residential use, thus making it permissible to carry in it on Shabbos despite its size. So it's a large area, but it's got an eruv around it, or a wall, a fence, whatever, or an eruv, all right, you can carry in it. Nizra rubo, if a midrash of it was then sown with seed, Harihu Kagina, then it's like within this area, it's now like a garden. Guess what? And carrying is forbidden. Since a garden is not suitable for dwelling, the karpaf has lost its residential designation. So that's interesting. So you have this allowed area, which according to halacha is allowed to carry in on Shabbos. And then you decide I'm going to do a beautification by planting gardens in it. You can't walk in the garden. You can walk, but the garden's taking up a lot of the area. You just got rid of the allowance for you to carry in there. Interesting. Nita rubo, if most of the carpet was planted with trees, but if you planted most of that area with trees, it's still allowed to carry in it. Why? Everybody loves shade. So nobody can complain about the shade, and that makes it easier to walk. Halavai, we had more trade, for the 45 years I've been, or 44 years, I've been in North Miami Beach. There's always these, the city comes out and plants trees, and the swells constantly planting trees. Problem is, they plant these very weak little trees. Every time we get a hurricane, these trees fall over, and then they got to plant them again. They need to plant, like you see these older neighborhoods with the oak trees, where they've got the canopies of trees, or some blocks have that.
It's a business.
It's a business. All right. Okay. It's monkey business. All right. Okay. It's permitted. So why is it permitted still to carry in that area? Since people stroll in the wooded area, it retains its status as a car path designated for residential use. We learned from this price that sowing in open area with seed is considered a modification of the area's function, while planting with trees is not. Accordingly, it is permissible to plant the tree in the medrash. The Mishnah states, weiter. All right, we're halfway down the page. We mentioned this in the Mishnah, that if the city was there first and the tree is planted afterwards, he must cut down the tree, and the city doesn't have to reimburse him. All right, Maishna Gabi Bor. And that Gemara's can ask a question, wait a minute. What about we learn the case of where he plants a tree and his neighbor has a hole for whatever reason nearby? What's the difference in the case of a tree that was planted illegally within 25 amos of a neighbor's pit? What we learned at the Katani, for we learned Kotset for Notain Damin. The tree's owner, must cut down the tree, and the pit's owner pays compensation. And here's the case: the tree's planted illegal in 25 amos of a sea, the Katani, Kotset Notain Damin. But so why is it that by two private individuals, the other one, the one that owns the pit, has to pay the one who's mandated to cut the tree down towards the cutting? All right. But in the case of the sea doesn't have to pay him. All right. Amar Rav Kahana said, Kidra devei shutfei chamina below karira. A pot in the charge of two cooks is neither hot nor cold, because each one relies on the other to do the necessary work. Meaning that if we're dealing with a city, all right, that who's going to be paying? The inhabitants of the city. Well, each person this is like getting a jug of vodka, and everyone's supposed to bring vodka to put in a giant jug, and everyone brings water, right? The Chaim story. All right. So each one is going to say, I don't have to pay, the other one's going to pay. I don't have to pay, the other one's going to pay. All right. Okay. Gemara challenges, and that's the expression, a pot that has two cooks. All right. It's not hot. It's not cold. Who knows what it's going to be? Each cook is going to rely on the other one. Okay. 5 minutes left. Well, my kushya, what difficulty? My kushya, but what difficulty do these contrasting issues present? Dilmashani. Perhaps damage inflicted on public is different from damage inflicted on an individual. Therefore, although one is compensated for cutting down the tree whose roots threaten an individual's pit, there's no compensation for cutting down the tree that mars public property. The Gemara accepts this rationale and retracts its assertion that Rav Kahana's statement was made in regard to the previous question. Rather, Rav Kahana's answer was stated in reference to our Mishnah. It was stated in regard to a difficulty presented in the case of Mishnah. Emilim Kadam Katzit from Dasan Damin said if the tree came first, he has to cut down, but the city compensates it. The Gemara describes difficulty presented by that. But let the tree's owner say to the city, pay me first, and then I'll cut it down, because I don't trust that I'll cut it down and then you're going to pay me. Rav Kahana resolved this difficulty. Amar Rav Kahana, Kidra devei shutfei lo chamira v'lo kidra. He uses the same answer again. Upon the charge of two cooks, it's neither hot nor cold. He was entitled to let the tree remain until he was paid. So that's the thing. He wants to make sure he's paid first, because none of the city's residents will consent to be first to pay. Therefore, the sages required him to cut down first. And if the city's residents do not pay, he may demand compensation in court. So then he can go to court. The Mishnah states, all right, Suffolk, Zeh Kadam Kotzes. All right. If it's a suffix, we said this before, he has to cut, which came first, the chicken or the egg, the tree or the city, or the incorporation of the city. He still has to cut it down, but he doesn't get compensated. Why is it different from the case with the individual neighbor with the pit? Where it's unclear whether the tree or the pit came first, he need not cut down the tree. Is that a question? Why is an instance of certainty decide in favor of the tree's owner in the case of a pit against the city, against favor of the tree's owner in the case of a pit, and against the tree's owner in the case of saying, which why is there a difference? From our answers, Hussam, there in the case of a tree that's been planted near a pit, the Vadai where a tree was definitely came before a pit, it's not subject to cutting. Spekonami, in the case of uncertainty as well, we do not tell the tree's owner to cut it down if it's uncertain which came first. The burden of proof that the tree was planted illegally lies on the owner of the pit. Here, however, in the case of a tree was planted near a city, the Vadai, where even the tree that definitely came before the city, it's subject to cutting. In the case of the Suffolk, we're not for sure. Like cuts, we said it has to be cut down. The Mishum Demei, and as far as compensation, with them prove that your tree was here before the city, and then you can collect compensation for cutting it down. We're up to the Mishnah, so we'll stop there because it's 7:30. Seems like everyone has to go. Okay, see you. Okay, close it.
Thank you, Rennie.
Yeah, take care. Thanks for coming, listening.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much.
See you, Daniel. All right. Let's shut this down. Okay, leave.